The Lore Forge.
Chapter 3. It was scarcely past noon when Enoch brought the trek to a sudden halt. The wind picked up across the chilled heath. The grey skies above them mottled both dark and light. Bringing his horse about, he drew close to Odo, and those cold, pale eyes stared hard. "We're far enough away," Enoch said, as the wind came to a sudden lull.
"So now is the time we have words."
They were ominous words spoken in an ominous place. The moor was as familiar to Odo as Renfrey, Remilda, or wily old Jax, but out here, far from the crooked tower, the watchful eye of the wizard, it was a terrible, unsympathetic place. The wind that blew across the heathers and the sparse juniper was cold, whispery, and mournful. The grey sky above dreary at best, threatening at its worst. Each step forward by the horses, and each minute further from home, made the queer chaos of the wizard's compound seem cheerful by comparison. And now the man with the grim, lifeless eyes of a killer wanted to have words. Odo's eyes went wide, as one hand clutched the satchel and the other his staff and reins. "Sir?" "Captain," Enoch corrected Odo before commanding.
"Off the horse."
At first, Odo seemed confused as he looked nervously at Enoch. Letting go of the reins, he threw his leg around and jumped from the horse. Stalks of dried heather and mead grass crunched beneath his feet and cushioned his landing. Wading through a sea of vegetation, Odo came around to the horse's muzzle, taking hold of the reins once more. Enoch turned on his mount and came about, stopping only a few feet from where Odo stood, staff in hand. With a withering gaze, Enoch asked, "You know the first rule of a freelancer, boy?" Odo looked up, innocent and nervous, his dark pupils like holes in a sea of white that grew wider as the captain spoke. Clutching tight his staff, Odo shook his head. "Live long enough to spend your gold," answered Enoch. "I've done this for too long to know when something is too good to be true." "Sir?" "Captain," snapped Enoch, before adding with a growl, "Remember that." As stunning as Enoch's rapid change in temperament was, it was grimly refreshing to see something more than a cadaverous presence from the man escorting him. "Captain?" Odo's voice was unsteady and uncertain. More than a few times he thought about the talisman and maybe Renfrey's warning being more than just a coincidence. "No one pays what your master paid for so simple a service," Enoch said. "So what is it that I risk my life and that of my men? It's not for some dusky-skinned boy. That I know." At first, Odo started to direct his attention to his satchel and the contents within mindlessly. He stopped soon enough, making the movement seem only a twitch. Yet his silence didn't satisfy Enoch in the least. It only made him angrier. A sword sang as it was drawn from its sheath, holding out the blade for Odo to see. The mercenary captain edged his horse closer. Best speak, boy. Play games with me, and I leave. With the gold, while you remain here. Enoch was an imposing figure, and on that horse with sword displayed he looked like death incarnate. Again Odo's mind went to the talisman, as the words of Remfrey echoed in his scattered thoughts. Use it sparingly. Use it wisely. Head down, eyes darting this way and that as he debated what to do. Enoch nudged his horse closer. Odo backed away, let go of the reins and paused reluctantly. Then, cradling his staff in the hollow of his shoulder, he untied the thong of the satchel, pulled back the flap, reached in and pulled out the package. At first, he merely held it close to him in the palm of his hand, but after a few moments he lifted it high for the captain to see. No bigger than a large potato and very much of the same form, a lump of something rested in Odo's palm. Covered over in thick parchment, a series of runes covered the surface of the wrappings. At the seams, crude discs of blue wax held the paper in place, sealing the object within and hiding it from prying eyes. Enoch's face showed an uncharacteristic curiosity as he scanned Odo's burden, furrowing his brow for a moment. With a sudden graceful motion he dismounted, his heels thudding hard against the soil of the moors, sword in hand. Dead, desiccated vegetation hissed as it scraped against his pants and cloak as he moved closer to look at the object. Odo hazarded a look at Enoch. Hands reached out to grab the paper-bound package, only for Odo to pull away. "No!" he exclaimed. "No, sir!" "Captain!" Enoch growled, those dead eyes narrowing in anger as he pulled his hand away. "Apologies, Captain," Odo replied, looking scared. For a moment, the mercenary captain analyzed the thing up close, noticing the markings on the paper and paying special attention to the wax seals. "What is it?" I don't know," replied Odo, trepidation and concern dripping from his words. "A rock, I think." The wind picked up slightly, and the grasses sighed in response. A horse snorted as the grim soldier's eyes stared once more at the package. "Open it." "No," Odo said softly, with a shake of his head. "Then I will." "The runes," replied Odo, in a nervous rush. "The markings?" Enoch asked as his finger danced over the wax seals. "Yes," Odo answered with a nod. "What are they?" "Protective wards, I think," said the young man, as his brow creased with concern and confusion. He started to sway a bit in the wind, more nerves than anything else. "The wizard has shown me a few, but..." "But what?" "These, I do not know. There are 3 of them," explained Odo. "One, I think, keeps others from knowing what is contained within." That remark got the captain's attention. "Others?" Odo didn't hear the question and continued, agitated. "The runes, I think, are protective." "Didn't you hear me, boy?" pressed Enoch forcefully. Pointing to the rock, he said, "Who wants this?" "I do not know," Gettr replied swiftly, fearfully. "The Major said nothing, only that it was important I deliver it to the king. That is all I know." "You know runes. You must be a wizard, then," said Enoch, his voice less commanding. "No, sir, Captain," Odo replied, suddenly remembering. "What are you, then, if not a wizard?" Odo began to relax, and he withdrew the stone, pulling it closer to him. "Mortals cannot be wizards." "Is that the only secret you bring with you?" Enoch asked, his head nodding at the stone. Odo paused before he answered, wondering what to say next. "Yes, Captain." Those pale, dead eyes then fixed on Odo with a stare so hard, Odo could barely stand its glare. He began to perspire, even though the wind was gusting cool.
Hear me, boy.
Enoch spoke with a voice that had the growl of a wolf defending its kill.
I have known all sorts of thieves and liars in my time. I know a lie when I smell one, and you stink of it. One more lie from you, and I take the wizard's gold and leave you here alone to make your own way back.
Closing his eyes, the young man let out a frustrated sigh. Opening the flap of the satchel with one hand, the other laid the wrapped bundle within. Leaving the flap to close on its own, Odo then dug between his cloak and the lapels of his robe to produce the talisman. With one hand, he pulled the chain taut and let the stone dangle a bit from his fingers. For the first time, Odo saw Enoch's eyes burn with intense curiosity. The captain's lids narrowed as his head drew closer, the pale orange dot of light at the center catching his attention. The fingers of his left hand slowly went up for the stone, looking to touch it. Odo was quick to wrap his own around it and pull it away.
"No!"
exclaimed the young man.
"It will burn you."
Pulling back, the mercenary looked furious at first, but this faded quickly as he withdrew his hand.
"What is it?"
"A talisman."
"You think me a fool, boy?" snarled the captain. "What was that in the center?"
"A part of the wizard," explained Odo. "Something he has given me to use. Mortals cannot use magic, only wizards. The power is granted to them by the Maker." He paused for a moment and tucked the stone beneath his robes. "It's only meant for me. It will burn others who try to take it for their own." Sniffing at the explanation, Enoch looked amused, if being amused was a trait he possessed. "What?" asked Odo, but the captain didn't reply. Instead, he answered one question with another.
"Any other secrets you carry?"
"No," Odo replied, before falling with, "Captain," once more. Pale eyes scanned him over, and Enoch's face fell slightly. Curiosity showed itself clearly now, as the freelancer pondered his next move. A moment or two passed, and then a quiet, nasal sigh.
"No more secrets, boy,"
Enoch said softly, but with a serious stare.
"Gold may buy my sword, but my word is law. I command, you do. Understand?"
It took a moment for Odo to pass that in his brain. His eyes looked one way, then the other. Finally, they gazed off into an unseen horizon, Odo understanding the meaning behind Enoch's remarks. That if magic was required, he would need to supply it. Enoch grew impatient.
"You understand, boy,"
Odo replied meekly. "The power the Magus has given to me isn't—"
"My skin has more value than your conscience," interrupted Enoch. "You understand, boy?"
It sickened Odo inside, the very thought of the choice he had to make. Remfry was a father to him, as much of a father as he had ever known. As reluctant as he was to use the talisman, he was doubly more hesitant now. But there was the satchel, the stone within, and last words Remfry spoke to him. Closing his eyes, the nod he offered Enoch was barely above a twitch.
"What was that?"
Enoch pressed, not satisfied with a wordless reply.
"Yes, Captain."
The words sounded forlorn and filled with shame. Odo didn't want to look at the mercenary, so his eyes gazed downward. Enoch stood up straight and scanned his young charge once more before turning his head and spitting. With a lazy wave of his hands, he mumbled as he turned away.
"Mount up, boy. It's a ways to Collinshaw, and the daylight is burning."
Somewhere in the wind, Odo thought he heard a whisper, but it was just a cold breeze over the heather. The moor did not get friendlier from that day forward.